Hello and welcome to Breaking the Chains. I am your host, Andrea Copeland. We are excited to be back for season number 5. And as always, joining me on the episode is the two doctors, Dr. Lehman Bates. He is the pastor of Ebenezer Baptist Church, and Dr. Mikhail Baith of Global Faith Alliance. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Breaking the Chains, as I stated, has been on the air here at Charlottesville Public Access Television for 5 seasons. And it started out in December of 2006. And the purpose of the show is partly it's surrounding the African American search for truth. We've talked about many topics, including slavery, politics, religion, a lot of the hot button topics and how it relates to the African American community as well as society as a whole. And today, as always, in keeping with the themes of Breaking the Chains, we're going to talk about some more hot button topics. And one many of you are familiar with is we're going to discuss the pastor in Gainesville, Florida, who was going to burn the Quran. On September the 11th, he was going to have a Quran burning bonfire, if you will, down at his church. He said it was something God told him to do. But as we all know, it set off a firestorm amongst Christians and Muslims and people who are atheists. It set off a firestorm amongst everyone. So let's talk about that. His name is Reverend Terry Jones. He said that God told him this was something he needed to do because Islam is of the devil, as he says. Dr. Baith, I want to ask you, you being of the Muslim faith, what are your thoughts on that?
Reverend Jones, if I understood correctly, had talked to God. So if God ordered him or encouraged him to do whatever he intended to do, there's nothing anyone could say. He has that right. But it appears to be that there are other forces that felt that his action would have brought about a reaction that perhaps Reverend Jones misunderstood what God had told him to do. Mm-hmm. For instance, burning books has been historically action throughout the world when they did not want people to become educated. And the best way to stop people from becoming educated is to burn their books. So if you don't want them educated about the Islamic faith and the doctrines within the Quran, you burn their books. I think the same thing happened here in the United States, where books were burned when they did not want people to become educated in certain things. So I think that Reverend Jones, and I think he had, 30 or 40 members of his church, concluded that God's message coming to Reverend Jones perhaps had been distorted in such a way as other people may have been injured who were not of the Islamic faith, may have been injured by his actions.
Okay. Pastor Bates, as a pastor in the Christian denomination, now, what are your thoughts on it? Because in my opinion, something like this, I was always leery from the giddy up because it was something that was going to bring a tremendous division. And I felt it was done not in love. I just don't see God telling someone to do this, knowing this would be the reaction. So what are your thoughts as a Christian pastor about what this gentleman had planned to do to burn the Quran?
Well, I, for one, I have to investigate the motivation behind many of the things that are happening in today's society. Dr. Baith mentioned, and it was an excellent segue into what we're going to talk about later, regarding the Hegelian Dialectic, how you have a problem, you have a reaction to the problem, and then you have a solution to the reaction. I certainly, as a Christian pastor, I have a different view and understanding that Pastor Jones has, but I'm also of the belief that, like with Dr. Baith, If he believes God has told him to do that, then he has an obligation to do that. Now, like with everything else, what I found interesting was the reaction that resulted as a pastor of a small church in rural Florida would garner this type of media attention, so much so that it would attract the attention of the upper echelons of our government. I thought that was interesting.
Why? Is it that serious?
Well, considering what we hear through the media, we have a lot of comments, statements, rhetoric that is perpetuated on a daily basis. We've had things said of a much stronger nature, of a more belligerent nature.
Towards the Islamic faith?
Just in general. And why is there this type of attention given to this specific issue? Plus, it is also my belief, regrettably, that the American people, by and large, we're a very arrogant people, and we don't recognize the fact that there are other faiths, there are other people that hold great value in the things that they believe and in the things that that represent their belief. And sometimes we don't understand why someone would go to lengths to want to, commit a level of violence because you have tampered on something that I hold dear. But again, that's another issue. So that's...
Well, Dr. Baez, do you think the proposed building of the mosque at Ground Zero, as they called it, if that weren't in the news, do you think this pastor's attempt to burn the Quran would have received as much media attention? Of course, it's all speculation, but what do you think?
If we look at things in this country, let's talk about some of the individuals who've contacted some of the Islamic leaders. Number one, in this country, in the United States of America, there is an organization, whether people call them secret societies, secret, or whatever they want to call the organizations. You have the Shriners, who do very philanthropic activities here. Those are called Muslim sons, who belong to the Masonic orders, and they get to a higher level of worldly awareness. And they have a holy Quran in their temples or in their mosque or in their special orders. Now, they recognize themselves as Muslim sons, but you never hear people say anything about their being Muslim sons as opposed to Muslims. Many of the presidents of the United States of America, there are several presidents who attained the position of a president and he became a Muslim son. When this particular one that we have as president right now, he was raised by a father who was a Muslim, but because of his name being a Islamic related name, there's been within this society a certain attack against being connected to the Islamic nature. Now, we need to deal with this in a realistic manner. In the United States of America, many of our ex-presidents have either been Muslims or raised themselves up to the 33rd level.
For instance?
Oh, let's see. Let's begin with George Washington, the head of the Masonic order, who, among his other brothers, who architect and developed the entire layout of this entire country. Your dollar bill has on it symbols that dealt with the Muslim order. And since these secret societies, which are no secret in this particular country, had risen to the highest levels of recognition in those own orders, those are called Muslim sons, who have recognized the possibility and the reality that there is a global recognition of many religions, many religions. The United States of America, under our previous president, Bush, and other 41 and 43, and 42, Clinton, the entire order has told people we need to look at things at a global level because they want our country to begin to move away from individualized country. Don't look at yourself as just an American. Look at yourself as part of the world. And so there are people who are moving to undermine the New World Order that is absolutely in existence, and absolutely America is promoting these things.
So why All right, help me understand as someone
Okay.
who's not a Muslim, and I know the Quran is a sacred book in the Islamic faith. Why do you think this man just threatening to burn the Quran set off such a firestorm? Is it the blatant disrespect of the Quran, of what you all believe? What was it that this little pastor in rural Virginia, what was it about him and this incident that could have people way across the Middle East reacting in such a way?
The reaction was the way that the media brought this out.
Okay.
I mean, we didn't attend his church. There were no Muslims who were attending the church. And his church was not at a level when they were having their own TV program at this level of an attack. It was the media itself, and it became recognized when people of authority in the country, which is, again, you back to your president, your top-level defense people, raising that this is a major issue. This has happened historically. In England, the British were members of the Catholic Church. When they wanted to break away and become a more Protestant or Anglican church, they began to burn the Catholic Bibles. They began to burn them. The Catholicism groups then began to burn the Protestant and the Anglican Church Bibles. It's always been an attack against different types of religion. In Islam, there was a time that the movies came out attacking Christ Jesus, and that these movies were coming out depicting him in a very demeaning manner. There were churches that said nothing, but Muslims began to burn down the movie theaters that attacked Christ Jesus inside the movies. Then there are other books that were made that began to attack the prophet in Islam. This has been going on over the world a long time. The gentleman that you mentioned, Reverend Jones, if I understood it correctly, Reverend Jones equated it to the New York situation, where it said that in New York, it was the Muslims responsible for bringing down the two buildings. Now, there's still, if people want to look historically at the two buildings that came down, talk to those in the Islamic faith and see whether we agree or not. Did the buildings come down? Yes. But was it just Muslims involved with it? Or was it an effort to begin to focus attention away from what was going on in this world?
Pastor Bates, do you think the media, the president, the Secretary of State became involved out of fear of another 9/11?
Well, that's a very difficult question to answer because, again, as Dr. Bayou stated, there is a higher level of, and I hate to use this word because it's a label nowadays, that when you have people who are in search of the truth and they either find it or they find evidence that contradicts what the general media feeling is, they're called conspiracy buffs, conspiracy theorists. I think as it pertains to 9/11, we're now close to 10 years removed from that experience, and I think enough now has come out where people who have decided that they're going to think for themselves, they're asking some very legitimate questions, and the questions became coming out right after 9/11 as to why those two buildings, as to questions as to why at the center on a Tuesday morning, which is one of the highest trading days globally, where you have two buildings that the writers and the articles said holds over 50,000 people, to find out that you had this mass exodus of people who were told not to be in the buildings at that day, to find out that 7 floors beneath those two buildings, you had the largest gold repository in the world. What happened to the gold? There's a lot of questions that are coming out now about the whole 9/11.